Hi, I'm Dr. Walter Matwaychuk, and the purpose of today's intermittent reinforcement email message is to talk to you about the different components of the ABC model. In order to use REBT effectively, you need to know and commit to memory the components of the ABC model in order to unpack an emotional experience that you wish to modify. REBT helps you to adopt healthy negative emotions in response to adversity, but you need to first identify the adversity, the underlying basic attitudes that lead to your unhealthy emotional consequences. In rational emotive behavior therapy, we use the mnemonic device of the ABC framework. A stands for adversity, B stands for basic attitudes, and C stands for consequences, which include emotional consequences, behavioral consequences, and even subsequent biased thinking consequences. I can't tell you how many times in talking with people, they'll refer to the ABC model, and I'll just happen to ask them what B stands for, and they might say something like, well, it stands for behavior. And if you're going to effectively identify your unhealthy attitudes that REBT posits are at the core of your disturbance, you need to be able to understand what the adversity is, what your basic attitude is, and what the emotional consequence is, and be able to use the framework to unpack each of these elements in an emotional experience. In today's email, I talk about the different types of adversities that you want to be on the lookout for. An adversity in REBT theory is a negative state of affairs. It could be something in the past, something you're currently grappling with, or even something in the future that you anticipate experiencing. Furthermore, an adversity can be an internal experience, like a physical symptom that you think about and then make yourself anxious about, or it can be even an emotion, so that in REBT, we have what we call secondary disturbance, where the adversity is an emotional experience, and then we make ourselves upset about that first emotional experience. So the first step in using REBT is to be able to specify what the adversity is and what your emotional consequence is and what your behavioral consequence is. Now, I'm amazed when people fail to write these things down. It doesn't take too much effort to write on a piece of paper A, B, and C, and then to use that piece of paper to help you pencil in each of the elements of the ABC model. I always encourage people to do this because when a novice REBT person uses the ABC model and tries to do this in their head, they very often confuse the different components and don't get anywhere fast. So in today's email, I talk about each of the fundamental elements of the ABC model. I define them, and then I also encourage you to use paper and pencil when you are attempting to identify these elements in an emotional episode that you would like to use REBT on, and to work on having a healthier emotional experience with that particular adversity. So read today's intermittent reinforcement email message and begin to get in the habit of scribbling on paper the A, your basic attitude at point B, and the emotional and behavioral consequences at point C. I wouldn't worry too much for the time being about the thinking consequences that are a result of at C. I would keep it simple to start and work on just identifying emotional consequences and behavioral consequences at point C. And I plan to, in our next email, to talk about the D and E, which involves disputing and then creating an effective new philosophical attitude. But what I'd like to do is keep this a little bit simpler by having people read this email and get in the habit of really understanding what adversities are, what to look for when they begin to upset themselves, and then to be able to clearly specify their basic attitude and the emotional consequence that they're experiencing. I would also add that each Saturday I do this with a person when I hold my rational emotive behavioral conversation hour on Zoom. And by watching me carve out each of these elements or specify them when talking to a person about a real problem, it will enhance your ability to do this with yourself. So I would encourage you, if you're serious about learning how to help yourself using REBT, that you attend my weekly rational emotive behavioral conversation hour on Zoom, where you can watch me do this with someone and then ask questions about what you just witnessed. It starts at 9 a.m. in Philadelphia, which is 2 p.m. in the UK, at 4 p.m. in Bucharest, 6:30 in New Delhi, 10 p.m. in Tokyo, and 11 in Sydney, Australia. I hope to see you on Saturday, and if you need the link, you can write to me and request it at rebtdoctor@gmail.com. That's rebtdoctor@gmail.com. I hope to see you on Saturday.